For decades, the entire world operated on one single, huge assumption about China. Well, this is the story of how that assumption didn't just fail, it spectacularly backfired, and in the process, redrew the map of global power. All right, so let's dive right in. What you're looking at here is a handshake that the entire world was watching. This wasn't just any meeting. This was a super high-stakes summit between US President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. And it was way more than a photo op. It was a moment that put a spotlight on a power shift that had been decades in the making. And you really have to understand the gravity here. I mean, analysts weren't calling this a routine meeting. Not at all. They were calling it, and this is a quote, a final, desperate attempt to de-escalate the most dangerous great power rivalry since the Cold War. The whole world was pretty much holding its breath. Okay, now look at this. The language here tells you everything you need to know. On one side, you've got President Trump just showering President Xi with praise. Great negotiator, a great honor. It's almost deferential, right? But then look at Xi. He's calm, he's measured, and he's talking like an equal partner, setting the rules. This isn't just a difference in style. This little exchange captures the entire power shift we're talking about. So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? To really get it, we've got to jump in the time machine and look at America's grand plan for China, a strategy that took decades and multiple presidents to build. It all started with this core idea, which Richard Nixon laid out way back in 1967. The strategy was basically containment through engagement. And the thinking in Washington was, pretty straightforward. If we bring China into the global economy, if we help them get rich, they'll naturally become more democratic. They'll become more like us. And for more than 30 years, this wasn't just a policy. It was gospel in Washington. I mean, from Nixon's historic visit to paving the way for China to join the World Trade Organization, America basically rolled out the red carpet. All of it was built on that one single massive assumption. Here's the thing, though. China was playing a completely different game. They were following a very different piece of advice from their former leader, Deng Xiaoping. Hide your strength, bide your time. The goal was never to become a Western-style democracy. Nope. The plan was to use the system to build its own power. Quietly. So yeah, that big American gamble, it just didn't work. China took all the economic goodies, the investment, the technology, you name it, and used them to create an absolute economic miracle. But that political freedom America was waiting for, it never showed up to the party. And the result of all that biding your time, it wasn't just a stronger economy. It was the birth of an industrial giant, a manufacturing behemoth that has totally redrawn the world map. Just look at these numbers. They're staggering. In the 2 decades after joining the WTO, China's slice of the global manufacturing pie exploded to 30%. And in that same time, America's share got sliced in half, dropping to just 15%. It's a total jaw-dropping reversal. And when we talk about scale, it's hard to even wrap your head around it. This isn't a small lead. Take something as foundational as steel. China now churns out over 13 times more than the US. I mean, just think about what that means for building anything, from skyscrapers to battleships. But listen, this isn't just about old-school stuff like steel. China has played a brilliant long game, cornering the market on the technologies that are going to define this century. We're talking more than 2/3 of all electric vehicles, over 75% of their batteries, and a mind-blowing 90% of all solar panels. Oh, and you know those rare earth metals that are in, everything? Your phone, a fighter jet, all of it? Yeah, China processes over 80% of those too. So this incredible rise, it was bound to lead to a showdown. The old playbook of engagement was officially thrown out the window when a new American president walked into the Oval Office with a totally different and way more aggressive game plan. See, President Trump didn't see China as a partner you nurture. He saw them as a business rival you crush. He treated geopolitics like he was in a boardroom, not the Situation Room. His core belief was that with enough economic muscle, enough bullying, he could basically force China to do whatever he wanted. And so, in 2018, he made his move. He launched an all-out trade war. His weapon of choice? Absolutely massive tariffs on Chinese goods. The thinking was pretty simple. The US economy is king, and China's export-heavy model would just fold under the pressure. It was supposed to be quick. But this is where the whole story flips on its head. Because Trump and his team made a massive miscalculation. They totally underestimated China's resilience, and they had no idea what kind of strategic chess move was coming next. China didn't just stand there and take the hit. Oh no. They hit back, and they did it with the precision of a surgeon. First, they stopped buying American soybeans, a direct gut punch to farmers in Trump's political heartland. Then, they started making noise about restricting those critical rare earth metals, which would have crippled America's tech and defense industries. And maybe most importantly, they just stood their ground. They sent a clear message to the world. We will not be bullied. And just like that, the whole gamble backfired, big time. The economic pain wasn't just in China anymore. It was hitting home in the US, right where it hurt politically. And so, who was it that picked up the phone to call for a truce? It was the American president. The guy who started the fight was now coming to the table from a position of weakness. It's like that analyst said. It was a perfect reversal. The rifle Trump thought he had pointed at China's head was suddenly pointing right back at the US economy. So what are we supposed to make of all this? What does this massive reversal mean for the future of global power? Where do we possibly go from here, now that the old rulebook has been torn up? Well, the takeaways are, they're huge. First, the era of America being the undisputed #1 economic champ, it's over. Second, the new battlefield isn't about military might alone. It's about economic leverage. It's about supply chains and tariffs. And that decades-long American plan to change China, yeah, that failed. And maybe the craziest twist of all, you now have communist China presenting itself as the champion of global free trade, while the US is the one putting up walls. And that leaves us with what is probably the single most important question for the next 50 years. The unipolar moment, as they called it, is gone. We're now in a multipolar world. For the first time in a very, very long time, America has a real peer competitor on the world stage. And how the United States chooses to adapt, or maybe fails to adapt, to this new reality, well, that's going to define the world for all of us. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. Share this with anyone you think needs to see it. And seriously, we want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We really do read every single one. Thanks for tuning in.